Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, we're going to, oh, perfect. We will call to order this regular meeting of the Easton Board of Education at 7:31 p.m. on February 10th, 2022. Happy birthday to my mother. And all the good people in the household celebrating tonight. All right, so our first item on the agenda tonight is public comment. I'm sorry, you know what? I actually forgot to say members in attendance. The entire board is here in attendance, as well as members of the administration who are here to help us through our conversations tonight. We'll go to public comment. Hearing none, we will move on to board member comment. Any comment from the board? Hearing none, we will move on to our operating budget conversation and possible action for number 4. That's the 2022-2023 operating budget. We have a number of topics to talk about tonight. One of the items that we wanted to do a deep dive on first is a conversation we can have with Jay, who's on the line with us now, and is going to take us through a little bit of a deep dive on some of the healthcare questions. There's a few considerations. So there are different healthcare models, right? There's the self-funded model. That's what we do. There's, there's lots of different ones. One option is to go with the state, and there's actually a health plan with the state that could offer some savings to some districts. There's an analysis of which model makes the most sense for us going forward. That's going to be a part of the conversation. Then there's an understanding of, well, what should we do? How should we fund it next year? And recommendations around the ground that Jay's going to speak to. And then, we have related to the amount of the operating budget that we dedicate to healthcare. What percentage of that should we be thinking about as a reserve for the healthcare reserve? So those are the 3 big questions. Which model should we be in? How much should we be thinking about for next year? And then based on how much we should be thinking about next year, what's the recommendation for a healthcare reserve? So Jay, I hope that all makes sense and I didn't butcher it too much.
You did great. Can everybody hear me? Can you all hear me?
Maybe you can't hear us clearly. Yes, we can definitely hear you well.
Okay, great. And are you sharing the document I sent, or would you like me to?
If you don't mind doing it, you can. I'm also happy to do it if that makes things easier.
Let's see. I think I have it right here. Can you all see it?
Yeah.
And how's it look? Big enough?
It's a little bit small. If it's possible to go full screen or even zoom in, that would be great.
Yeah, let me see what I can do here.
It looks like there's some zoom controls up there in the upper left corner.
Let me see.
Right under the printer, it says 97.8%.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Next to that guy, and that'll zoom in, zoom in, zoom in.
How's that looking?
Is that starting to get there, everybody?
How about one more?
Maybe one
Bam,
more.
one more. I didn't think it would stay on the screen.
That's nice.
Okay. All right, folks. So as was being said, there's multiple ways to purchase healthcare. And the primary way for us to purchase healthcare, or the 3 primary ways, is we can partially self-fund a plan, which is what we do currently. That means we pay for our own claims for every person that's enrolled in our plan. We do have protections in there for any claim over $175,000, I should say, or any total amount of claims for any individual in 1 year of $175,000. And that's really what makes it partially self-funded. We don't go all on our own. It also means we have to pick an administrator in a network, and for us, that's Anthem. And so they process claims, provide us our network, and provide us our discounts, as well as they provide us our pharmacy plan as well. The second traditional place to purchase healthcare is through fully insured. And so that's if you're not willing to take the risk that is involved in self-insured. You can go to the carrier and have them take 100% of the risk. And they will do that for a premium. And they also generally want to make a profit for their investment. The benefit of fully insured is not so much that it is more in a 1 year increment, which is if the entire plan has an extraordinarily poor year, you are insulated in that year. But the next year, you're most likely going to receive a pretty high renewal. So they're only insulating you for that one individual year. And generally speaking, coming back around, they're going to come back and say, well, we want a much bigger renewal. I'm sure some folks have experienced that at times with other insurances they personally purchase. So it really becomes a long-term game. And on the long term, self-insured almost always beats fully insured. As long as you can manage the ups and downs that come at times with self-funded plans, you're going to save approximately 6% over fully insured, right? But you can have very good years and you can have a poor year or two as well. The most recent development is the state has put out a plan, and several communities, quite a few communities have gone to it. Mostly the gauge on whether or not you go to the state plan is, will you save any money? And so what we did was we put together some guidance for you from the last 5 years of what would make the most sense from a purchasing perspective. I'm going to shift my screen just a little because I'm having trouble seeing my other screens. But okay by everybody? And so as I take you through this, in fiscal year 18-19, Easton was covering about 114 employees on their plan, employees and then their spouses and dependents. The total cost of our plan ran about $2.6 million. We received approximately $492,000 in contributions. So the total cost to budget or to the town was $2.1 million. Okay. If we were in the state plan, and the state plan is fully insured, which means if we do well, we don't save any money. If we don't get money back for performing well. If we perform poorly, we don't have to pay any additional money either. It's a flat premium, just like fully insured, no risk, but no reward. So the state plan premium for us would have been 2.593 in that year. Okay, and so that number should be compared to the total plan cost of 2.632. And then you would take out a very similar contribution and have a very similar net number, but on the gross number, the state plan would have saved us about $39,000 in 18-19. Does that make sense to everybody how this flows?
Yes.
Okay, great. Great. And then on a fully insured basis, the plan would have cost about $2.7 million. So fully insured, where this was not a tremendously poor year nor a tremendously good year, we still saved money by being self-insured over fully insured, but the state did have a leg up. As we worked through the additional years, 1920, we had 118 folks. Total cost of our plan was $2.4 million. We were having a very nice year. The net cost was 1.9, but the state that year would have cost 2.85 because the state goes up every year. They're a more traditional type of plan where it doesn't fluctuate. It's just sort of, here's the premium this year, here's the premium this year, and so on. And so premiums would have gone up to about 2.849. So we ended up saving in what was a strong claims year for us, about $430,000. 2021, we had another strong claims year, only up about $100,000 in total claims, and we expect claims to go up each and every year. Claims trend is, probably one of the most written about things in the newspaper. So we spent about 2.522 on a gross basis, versus the state would have cost about $3,064,000. So Easton saved about $542,000. As we look to this year, I think everybody knows this year has been a really very phenomenal year. And we're looking at a projection. So we've looked at the first 6 months of the year, so through December 31st, when we produce this report. And we're projecting out the end of the year might look close to about 2.15 million. First, we know the premium for the state for 7/1/21 to 6/30/22 would have cost us approximately 3.2 million. So this year it looks like we'll be in. Sorry, go ahead.
No, there was no question. I think it was just a noise on the line.
Oh, okay. So this year we should save about $1 million over the state. As we look to 22-23, if we keep on this, on sort of this pace that we're on this year, but even if we look at the pace of the prior 2 years, we're in tune, to save a substantial amount of money again. And in this projection for 22-23, at the time that I did this, I used 6% expectation for this state increase. And I probably did this about 2 weeks ago. And in between that time, right about January 31st, February 1st, the state sent out early guidance of 8%. So this is actually, sort of showing the state in a
Better light than they should be.
better light. Yeah. Right. And that's really the extent of it. So the recommendation is strongly that we have outperformed as self-funding. Yes, there will be years that we don't outperform, as we saw in 18-19, but this is a long game, and on the averages, we've been highly successful as a self-funded health insurance plan and dental insurance plan, for that matter. What else does he say? Also, and lastly, Joel Barlow has numbers that look very similar to Easton. So as a participant in the cost of Joel Barlow, you're saving significantly over there as well under the self-funded plan.
Thank you, Jay, for taking us through that. Are there any questions about what we're looking at here, or Jen?
It's not, the bottom last row, it's not clear to me what that calculate or what that represents. I understand you're comparing the differences between the state plan and the self-funded, and you're sort of going through, I think, that middle section, the comparison, but the last two, I'm not sure I understand that.
Okay, so I'm going to go right here with 2021. Okay, Total plan cost self-funded was 2.522.
Yep.
State plan premium would have been 3064800. But on the bottom here, what I gave you was an estimation of what Anthem would have charged us on a self-funded, if we were fully insured with them.
It's the top box is a lot of stuff that's associated with self-funding model. The middle
Correct.
box is the plan model, and the bottom box is the fully insured.
Okay, okay.
Right. Which is why these three numbers are bolded, because they are the most similar number. They're meant to represent the exact same thing, but under the three different options.
Thank you.
So the reason I wanted to start with this question, and I thought it was helpful, I wanted to understand it myself, and I thought it would be helpful for all of us to understand, is because this board has actually made some really smart decisions in the past about moving to self-funded, and this illustrates that, but it also helps us to see that, you know, small changes from year to year or changes of $100,000, it may not represent a reason to change, but we should be considering it. If that wasn't 100,000, if it was 600 to the good, going with fully insured, or going with the state plan, and that we could project that that was going to be the case the next year, we should consider it. Here, I don't know if that's warranting it, because I think Jay knows his stuff, and he's saying it's about the long game. It's not about just 1 year. It's about year after year after year. But we should be paying attention to this, and I can imagine Board of Finance and other citizens of the town who care about, you know, us being responsible stewards of you know, the money that we have, making sure that we're not taking this for granted and just assuming that we are on the right model forever. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay.
Why are you a fully insured option? Why is there such a significant decrease?
For 22.
Fair enough. John, I actually, that brings out a great point, and I definitely want to hit on that. So where we say that there's potentially 123 savings, $3,000 savings, if we were to seek a fully insured quote, okay? Two things. One is, if you look at the cost that I'm projecting for this year, 2.15, versus next year, 2.459, I'm raising expectations $300,000. That's 15%. That would be a generally large number. I'm pretty certain, or I know, it's because right now we have 0 high claimants at the moment. We have a few moderate claimants, but nobody over stop loss. And I'm preparing for potentially 2 next year. And we've, over the years, had some debates about whether we should put in 1 or 2, but we've always sort of tried to be cautious, because a singular high claimant of $175,000 does impact budget significantly. And so we'd rather be a little on the conservative side than on the aggressive side. The second reason for this is the fully insured would be acting off of what is obviously a monumental claims year, okay? So even if we were able to achieve this 2.33 number, even if we reverted back to our norms, next year, we'd be looking at like a 20% increase, because this is based off of a reaction strictly from like the best of the best, which has been the most recent 12 months. And so it's, again, that long-term game that says, yes, but look at these years where we would have lost. And as much as people think they can just flip back and forth from self-funded to fully insured, it is not as easy as it sounds. It's not like, you know, buying a pack of gum. It's very difficult. But
Yeah. Understood. Any other questions for Jay on this part? Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Jay, how are you coming up with a projection of 2,021,456 when we're currently 333,000 below last year's number of claims, which was 1.7? That would be a $600,000 swing in the last 6 months. How is that? Why are you expecting that?
Jeff, so last year, I think I got the gist of the question. I couldn't totally hear it. Last year, we were at 2.5 million. This year, we have 6 months to go. And I believe that's going to come in around 2.15. Okay, but we still have 6 months. A lot can happen in 6 months. This 2.459 hedges more back towards some of our norms than what is truly a really strong year. Does that make sense?
I understand the theory, it's just that the way that our claims have been tracking over the last 24 months, it's been decidedly different than what it has been in the past.
And Jay, is your point that that sounds like an outlier of a year, and that you see it more as right around where we were 18, 19, 19, 20, that's where we'll be back to next year?
Yeah, but ultimately, yes. There's no crystal ball to this. I mean, I hope we continue to perform excessively well, but let's look at these 3 years. 2.6, I think 18, 19 is the year that the teachers came into the high deductible health plan. 19, 20 is the year the remainder, I believe, came into the health plan. 2021 was, okay, so we're here, we're on high deductible health plans, but it's been pretty static, and this year is just quite phenomenal. And so I don't think we're out of our range here to be saying, better than 2021, but maybe not as good as 21, 22. That is the way self-funding, tends to trend.
Is there, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to just quickly circle back to Devin's question. So the answer to a question about like 2.8 versus 2.3 is just that we look pretty good right now to an insurance company if we were to go out today because of our low previous year that they might offer us a lower. Yes.
Why is the headcount down?
Yeah, why are we looking at 114 or 22?
Jay, you reduced the headcount by 10 people. Why is that?
Do we know that's the case? Yeah, it could be spouses. It doesn't mean that we have 10 less people in the building, but there is a question as to why we would estimate it 114.
Is there a question on the table about the head count?
Yeah, head count for 22-23 looks like it's the same as 18-19, but that would bring us down 10 from where we are today. Do we have solid knowledge about participants coming out, or?
I will, John, I'll have to get back to you on that. That looks, these are all spreadsheets drawn in from other spreadsheets, and it's possible I did something to change the head count.
Is it because if that's calculated in the other numbers, then I think we're fine. It's just a mistake at the top. But if it's not calculated in the other numbers, the total plan cost may be going way up.
Right. And I know where these feed from. So the 114 would feed from somewhere different than the 2 million and 21.
And it makes more sense. It makes more sense that it's pulling from the same place.
Yeah.
Okay.
If our claims history is so good, why are the fees and premiums going up 7-8%?
Jay, did you get that question? So
Why are our premiums going up 7-8%?
fees and premiums, well, you know what, it's actually kind of strange. We see 2021, 156, but the year before it was 50 grand more. What's happening with that?
Okay, so is that asked from an employee perspective, or is that asked from a town perspective? Because it does matter.
I think the question is just that row, the row that cuts across fees and premiums. We're wondering why it goes 217 to 205, then down to 156, then back up to 210, and then up to 236.
Got you. Got it. So there's a couple things here. Fees and premiums. Two things are going on. Back in 1819 and 1920, Anthem had a different fee structure. So that part of, yeah, I hear what you're saying. I gotta pull up my spreadsheets now.
Hey, when was the last time that we did this out? Because I know that when we did, there was about $100,000 in savings that we were able to pull from the fees and premiums.
So
Okay, try to get the Board of Finance to let the Board of Education have it, they said, thanks to most. I think it was 18. I think it was 1819. Maybe earlier.
let me just take a quick look. I should be up in a.
Sure. And you are sharing that screen, just so you know.
Yeah, I'm gonna move it. There's nothing. I don't keep anything identifiable at all ever. Okay. I got screens behind screens. Yeah.
Randy, I think this is suggested that we're gonna have a $400,000 windfall this year. The 2522 compared to the 2150.
I mean, I did some quick math as Jerry said, but I think after 7 months, our fund balance, if we had drawn everything from the town,
Right, which we have.
and if that 343, which should have been in theory drawn from town and put in our bank account last year, instead of starting the year at 912, potentially we should have started the year at $1,250,000. And then if you run the math of our claims versus our budget,
Right.
employee contributions, funding HSAs, I think the balance right now is like $1,700,000. But there's a 30% chance that's wrong, but
No, I don't think so.
and then you roll it out the rest of the year, and our monthly budget is 209, and we're averaging 145. So, and we've already funded all the HSA, and so, you know, we could be sitting on a $2 million, somewhere between $1.5 million and $2 million.
What's the current budget? And what are the current budgeting?
That's the number here. That's the number that Jay's gonna confirm for us whether or not it's based on 114 or 144.
Okay. So I have both answers for you. So the 124 did pull from the wrong cell. It would read 114 for 21-22, but the rest of the numbers do not change. And the 156,958, there's a component of the fees and premiums that are in the other lines that pulled to the claims. So the total number of 2.522 is accurate. It's just one of the components pulled to the claim line.
Saying the fees and premiums line is not counting all of the, for column 117, or head count 117, 20, 20, 21.
Yeah.
That row has some of its fees and premiums allocated to other rows that are represented here, but the total of 2.5 is right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's, and I apologize for that. I truly do, but that has to do with, every year we do negotiations with Anthem. They also shift the way they do their fees. They've shifted how they charge for NAF fees, which is your network access fee, as well as the fact that we're eligible for rebatable dollars. And so it's the way they do it, like year to year, it's almost always reported differently, and it's our job to align all the fees. And I can see where I pulled that incorrectly. And it's up here.
Is there any utility to us bidding out so that to try to reduce the 236 on the fees and premiums that's projected for 22, 23?
So we bid for the administrator every 3 years. Generally speaking, first of all, it's a lot of work on the administration to change carriers. But secondly, most contracts that the carriers have with the hospitals and the larger physician groups are 3-year type contracts. And so if we go through the process and we find that, somebody has an edge on discounting, and that's the carrier that we elect, it's generally going to stay that way for the next several years. So we try to bid the administrator every 3. The stop loss, which is part of this fees and premium, we do bid whenever we feel like something is not aligned. And sometimes that's every year. I'm pretty certain we bid last year and definitely the year before. And we will be bidding this year as well. Okay.
Very good. That's very helpful. Any additional questions for Jay on this line? All right. I'm sorry? Yeah, right. Yeah, that becomes the question. So in terms of, you have other slides or other pages, Jay?
No, I was asked to share, this document, just the 3 different funding options. Other than that, I'm always happy to come out and go through, whether it's with the entire board or a smaller team, more details on where our claims generate from and come from, and what we're seeing. But this is a pretty strong 5-year picture of our options to purchase and how we've performed.
And so just so that I'm clear, for 22, 23, total planned cost, that row, the 2,459,301, that's the recommendation that's currently in the budget?
On a gross basis, right? So that's before employee contributions, which we think is about 465, based on the contracts and the, some of our anticipations.
Got it.
Okay, so closer to about 2 million flat after employee contributions.
Got it.
Okay.
Good. And so, yes, go ahead.
So one last thing as well, our capacity to be aggressive or conservative is also dependent upon reserve, right? So I have communities that have 0 reserve. My numbers tend to be much more conservative because a miss is then a really big deal. If you're sitting on reasonable reserves, shouldn't be excessive, but you can be aggressive. Make sense?
Yes. And what is the recommendation for where the reserve level should be as a percentage of annual plant cost?
Yeah. The rule of thumb used to be around 20%. That was also for larger communities, and we are concerned about whether you're fully insured, part of the state, or whoever, the growth in high-cost claimant dollars. So that number is easily 25, and at our size could even be 30% right now.
Okay.
Okay.
Any additional questions? Yeah, Randy?
Jay, what's changed? Because 5 years ago it was 2 to 3 months.
What's changed? What?
What's changed the thought process? Because
I think
I've sat through this with your predecessors and it's been 2 months, maybe 3 months to be really conservative.
3 months would be 25%, right?
Three months would be 25%. And it's really the growth in the high claimants and really the more so the mid-level claimants. So our 50 to 175s. So there is a lot of pharmaceutical. There is a lot of advanced treatments for more chronic and catastrophic disease. And so we're seeing a $150,000 claim once upon a time was rare. Well, you'd see 1 or 2. You could see those really regularly now. And a lot of that is pharmaceutical. And then again, improvements in treatment. We can have 3 claimants in a flash on Humira, and that can cost $100,000.
Any additional questions for Jay?
Go up with.
All set? Okay. Yes, Randy?
We're good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jay, thank you very much. I hope we didn't delay you from picking up the
No.
kiddos.
We did fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Have a great night.
All right, bye-bye.
Three months, 25%. It's 500. In the reserve that we've got.
Overshot by.
Yeah, and well, maybe I would
That's the
love,
recommendation.
I think I would love, like, I'm hearing the estimates from Randy and from you, Jeff, and I would love to have an official number from somebody in the central office for us to understand what that number is, because it has a profound impact. To Jay's point just now on how conservative we need to be about estimating for next year, if we have significant reserves, we don't need to be very conservative about the budget that we're putting aside for that, for the spend next year there.
A question about that. I'm assuming we'll come back to this again, but it sounds like we don't need anything in terms of the reserve, but
Right.
is there potential that we can pull that 1.99 whatever number to actually reduce the overall budget number for health insurance? Or can we
Yeah.
only change the amount of reserve?
Yeah, no, we could budget less money for insurance next year, knowing that if we put it at a certain number and we need more, we have plenty in the reserve. Right, but, and I don't know, Scott, if you know this, we're not able to take money out of the reserve. Is that true? We're, for anything other than, yeah, we can't reallocate money from the reserve for other purposes. It can only go to pay for health insurance. Right. Okay. So, so it's actually, that we have to draw down, and we haven't been drawing down because we've been right in line with the amount we've been budgeting, so.
Well,
yeah, with-
Well, last year we budgeted so much things.
Right,
And I think we're certainly looking at that
Yeah.
this year, although what we put in the original budget, I think was 143, 132.
yeah, it's not on that sheet, sorry, I thought it was on that sheet, so we'll have to pull up the actual budget in order to see that.
You just have to look at some assumptions that you're making between now and the end of the year.
Yeah.
Right, because the current balance in the health benefits account is approximately 700,000. In the health benefits account. In the remaining in our budget is 1.7 million. We have, say, 5 months of the school year left. Our current average claims per month is about 127,000. We are aware of potentially a couple of six folks that they could impact claims. So claims may not stay at 120,000 per month between now and the end of the year. Last year, the average claims per month were 192,000. So let's round up to about 200,000. So a 1 month standard would be about 200,000. 2 months, 400,000. 3 months, 600,000. And so whether you think about the previous standard, 3 months reserve versus the 20 to 25%, it's similar if you use last month's monthly claims data rather than this month, which is this year, which is pretty low.
You're talking about the average for the year versus last month.
Right.
Because last month was actually on par with normal.
And so based on the 5 months that we have left, are we going to be around the $200,000 mark? And if we are, then you could save approximately $1 million out of what's left in our budget, which is 1.7. If the claims go up significantly between now and it's $250 a month, then it's around 1.25. So you've got a potential of 500 to 750,000 left over at the end of the year. And so that's why you're in such a good shape, right? So we've recommended in our budget presentation in later slides what it looked like to decrease health insurance from approximately 5%, where it is now, down to 4, down to 3, and down to 2, and what that correspondingly gets you at the end.
But you're talking about two very vastly different numbers, right? The 1%, 2%, 3% is 20,000, 70,000, right? If our balance today, if you took what we started the year at, it's really $1.2 million, I believe, and you
$1.2 million in the reserve.
It'd be good to have some kind of official accounting of that. I don't think, I trust Randy's math. He's
I'm
good
just
at
going
this.
off what I've been told.
Yeah.
The math is math, but if that 343 was intended to be put into the reserve in June 30th, as opposed to August 30th, whatever, then this 912 would have been more by 340, right? So $1,250,000.
So if we have $1.25 million in our reserve
We started the year with that.
with
right?
that, and then we
July
could potentially have a lot left over this year.
We could have a lot left over this year, but that doesn't mean it goes.
It doesn't go in the reserve, like I'm just saying that we could
Right.
actually return, like
We
there
could
could be a
return.
portion that gets returned.
Correct,
Right.
and for next year, but no, we're not saying.
I don't think you can return any money from the insurance to the town this year.
Even,
What-
not from the reserve, from the overage that we budgeted, you know, from the reserve.
From the budget.
Yeah,
From the
from
budget.
budget, you take,
From the operating budget.
Right. So not from the reserve,
right.
sorry.
Not from the reserve, just from the money that was budgeted for healthcare. If we are below the number that we budgeted for, it was never put into the healthcare bucket. We keep it, we give
Because
it
we're
back.
at 1.2, we're like at 6 months. reserve.
Right, and so then the challenge becomes is forecasting next year, and if we do have, more than we should have in the reserve, then it seems to me wise to have a lower number that we budget for healthcare next year, knowing that we're trying to draw down the reserve.
But the one thing I think that we do need to check, because it says board, on our health sheet, board approved additional contribution of 343,567. There was no,
No, so
That's
that,
erroneous.
that was what we were saying,
Right.
that,
Well, that's the.
That-
we just need to find out what that.
So that,
we
yeah,
do, I think Vicky tracked it down.
yeah. Vicky was able to get the.
Yeah,
bottom.
Vicky emailed us, or John forwarded us email. right?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't email us, I'm just back to like 5 o'clock.
That's why I'm saying the 1,250,000 was really the year end balance, not the 912, but.
Right.
Okay, I think, listen, if we can, in theory, bring some of it forward in fiscal 21-22, and then also look at our budget amount for 22-23 and lower that. I think that's what
Yeah.
it was.
I agree. Okay. We have some slides?
Okay, great. I think we can hear from Jennifer DeConte just about the bridge program and providing an overview of that, and then we have a couple of slides.
Everyone should have printouts from Jen. Here, they look like this. Yeah. Oh. Oh, do we need one more copy? Is there other more copies?
As you know, one of the things we put in the budget for next year is the expansion of the bridge program into the center Staples building. So I remember when I came here, when I first started, we talked about putting the program in the Untitled building. So what I did was I actually looked at that presentation that I shared with you then, and I kind of updated that to reflect what our future needs are, particularly at the younger grade levels. So if you go to the next slide, I think it's pretty self-explanatory purpose of we have to look at the continuum of what we have to provide our students. That is our obligation, whether we have it in district or out of district. So really, I really just want to kind of highlight what we currently have and why we feel the need to expand that continuum to our youngest learners. Go to the next one. So this is really just the numbers. So when we look at, we're looking only here at this percentage of the total population of students in each building. So if you have 100 students, what percentage of that population have an IEP? And as you know, an IEP can be anything from speech only to students with more complex challenges. So when you look at the data from 2016-17, the Connecticut average is that of the total population. I broke it down to Easton and what percentage of family Staples students have an IEP and what percentage of students at Allen Color have an IEP. So if you look at the trend, we had some ups and downs, and there could be many explanations for that. Most recently, we've been in a pandemic. So when you look at the 2019-20 school year, 16.8% of the population has Sunday Staples had an IEP. And then also at Helen Keller, 14.1% had an IEP in the 2021 school year. Our numbers actually decreased. And that could be for a number of reasons. It could be because we've had a change in staff and we finally put stability in. That could be one explanation. Another explanation simply could be that we strengthen our intervention. You know, as we have become more savvy with providing support to students on the intervention side, we've been able to make sure they receive those support without having to be put into special ed. So there's a lot of reasons why the numbers have changed. So I just wanted I wanted this to kind of be the backdrop of looking at the entire population of students and what percentage of students have an IEP. Next one. I showed this slide to you previously, but just put it up here as a reminder. So when you look at the Helen Keller, as you see, we have the junior bridge option at the Helen Keller program. And then if you look at Samuel Staples, we do not have that option. So the question becomes, how do we support the students that have emotional challenges? And in the past, we've been very fortunate that we've had a very dedicated staff that have problem solved, in terms of pulling from different resources to support these students. To a level with how much can we support the student, given the fact that we are seeing the significant change in the social emotional needs. So that really becomes the question we have. So I just wanted to put this slide to show that we are missing a piece of our continuum at Staples. So, go to the next one, please. So these really, I know it's hard to read it on here, but you have a copy of it in front of you. Basically, when we look at the junior bridge, we have to define what are our goals. Why do we need a program like the junior bridge? So really, we have three goals. The first is it allows us to expand the continuum of services and support we can offer students in district. Two, it provides a safe place for a lot of these students to go. These are students that we know that have the capability and capacity to participate in the general ed setting. But because of their anxiety or their emotional needs, they're unable to stay in the class for the full day. So they need some place to go in order to learn the strategies, to practice the strategies they need. And once they are found, they are available to learn and they can go back into the classroom. So that place becomes almost like a safe harbor for them. And the third reason is it allows us to develop capacity in-house. It's very community focused, family oriented community. If we really want to keep these two students in Easton, they partake in the after school activities and it allows them to become a member of not only their school community, but the community at large. And that's really, I think, essential. They should have a sense of belonging in the community. But this is really the three goals that the other boxes reflect some of the offshoots of those goals, such as it provides the ease of access to the Easton community. It ensures that parents and teachers continue that collaborative partnership. So really, this is a reminder of why the program is Helen Keller. The same goals hold true in Staples. We can go to the next slide. So this is really what this really talks more about the cost effectiveness of the program. So if you look at the state website, the state data, that's our per pupil expenditure, how much we spend for each student in Easton. When we have to outplace the student, we have to take two things into consideration, which is the tuition cost, which is rent. If we go to a program like CES, they charge X amount of money. And then when you go to other programs in Stanford or in Hampton or Orange, they have a different rate. So we don't have one tuition rate. There's a range of tuition. So that's why we have the range there. We also have to transport the student. The transportation is also another factor that comes into play. So we have to take the tuition plus the transportation, and that's how we come up with the total cost. So again, I can't give you a fixed number, but I can give you a range. And it can be anywhere from easily $100,000 to $200,000 when we consider outplacement of student. So when we look at the outplacement of the student versus how do we build in-house capacity? So when we look at the building and in-house capacity, we're looking to have a teacher and educators. The transportation cost comes down because many of these students are able to take regular transportation. And one of the side benefits is that they also get to be here in their home community. So when we look at what the cost would be per student, 100 to 200,000 range versus the 40 to 50,000 range each student. Outpatient versus building capacity in-house. And what we are looking to do is to support roughly about 6 to 8 students. A program like this can only be successful if we keep the numbers small. So that's why when we look at projection of 6 students. You can go to the next slide. So these numbers are a little small, and I couldn't try to fit it all onto one slide. But basically, what we've done is we collaborated with building leadership, Jim, Michael, as well as the school mental health team, and said which students require this type of a program. So we have basically identified about 5 students here. Of course, we got the name. And we said these students currently are at Samuel State. I don't want you to get the impression that they are outplaced now. They are not. They are at Staples. But we are really at that teetering point of how do we best support them. So when we said if we would take these 5 students and outplace them, we looked at, we took the CEF tuition rate because that really is, I would say, the closest in our next area. That was the tuition rate plus the transportation cost, and then we gave them an estimate of what that would be. And then when we look here at the bottom, where it says 6 students, we had to outplace them, the cost all on the bottom. That is what your potential cost would be if we had to outplace them. But I do have to stress that these students are not outplaced right now. This would be a way to hopefully prevent them from going out. Next slide. We currently have a program at Helen Health. What I have to do, I actually put this there just for a reference point. We currently have about 6 to 8 students in the color program now. Some of those students will be graduating and going on to Dole High School. Hopefully they're going on with the skills that we taught them. So we do have kids in the pipeline, if you want to call it that are moving up from Samuel Staples, or they have moved into the district from other programs that could be comparable to our bridge programs. So we do see the continued need to support the program at Helen Health. When I was doing my budget numbers for this year, when we see what the cost of these outplaced students, we are not recommending any students to be outplaced at this point in time from Helen Health. And that speaks to the success that we have with this program. You have to remember that it's only in this point in time. Somebody can move in tomorrow and that could change. Right now, at this point in time, PPT are not recommending any student at Helen Health be outplaced with this profile. And I think that's because the board, took that leap of faith to make this program in place. And I think that speaks to the success we've had at Helen Health. And we're looking to see if we can replicate that at Samuel Staples for our youngest learners. If you go to the next slide. So when we look at the program design, what we need. So we are asking for a new teacher. I believe that's already been reflected in the budget. We'd like to hire a new teacher. I know that Mr. Parker asked earlier, what about support staff? What would that look like? We have some students currently in Helen Keller that we may have to move into this program because it better fits their profile. They may already have support staff attached to them. So we would redesign or redefine how that support staff is used for those students. So that's why you see where it says 2DT is already budgeted because of those particular students. So when you're looking at what the design cost would be, Helen Keller already has the bridge program budgeted in there. So that's why you see that cost being, because it's already in the budget. Want to move to the next one? So when we put it all together, what do all these numbers add up to? So really, when you look at, I think the top red is what is most important. That is the pension savings, that's the summary pension savings, at both Helen Keller and Assembly statements. Do you have any questions for me?
Okay. So two questions,
Sure.
totally different. One is just about gathering parent feedback. You know, I was just curious, if this has been discussed with parents, you know, if there's been any sort of pilot group discussion as to whether or not this is folks that this would affect, if they're receptive to the idea of this program as statements. Like, is this what the parents want? You know, like, is this what the children and the families are interested in? Like, it sounds wonderful on paper, the savings is obvious, but I guess I'm just wondering about.
We have not had specific discussions with parents, simply because I have not had a program to offer that. But I do know that the few conversations that we've had with families is that they really don't want their child outplaced. So often the first words that I hear from some of these parents is, please don't outplace my child. They're very connected to this community. But yet we recognize that there are some challenges which children are facing.
Can
I know that answers your question, but that's really what we, that's based on that feedback.
just a slight follow-up on that? Do we have feedback, sorry, do we have feedback from members of the existing program at Helen Keller? Do we have any feedback of testimonials that saying, hey, this has been a really good fit for us? We, you know, that maybe helps to get at the question you're asking too, Jen.
So I would say yes, we do. Do I have it in writing? I do not. But what I can say is that the students that are currently in the program absolutely adore going to that program because they feel that they can be success in that. I know that Dr. Black, would you like to
Yeah, I would love to.
what the occupation
Verify that. During the neighbors program, having that nurturing environment to turn to when things are tough. It's tough, right? And they can go to that place, it's a home base. They can go regather, support the active and support, the emotional support. They often just need that little reset. And they're back in class, or they might even have to pay there, and they might be able to have to do that. And they can also replace them, work on assessments and get the support they need, work on projects, to bring their friends in there, because we're located in the library, it becomes kind of a normal part of their day. It doesn't feel like they're off somewhere different, you know, they feel like they're very much integrated into the school. And so we see tremendous growth. We've got a couple of educators who do not have people to stay in the school, regular settings, all that support. I'm blown away by how. We follow that stuff.
Before you talk about more questions I have, but that was a good segue because you mentioned the media center. My next question was just about space. And I'm thinking ahead to, you know, we've talked about projections of in the next, I don't know, 3 to 5 to 10 years. I can see us at, you know, 6 sections per grade level at SSES. And I was with Daisies in a classroom upstairs in the 3rd grade hallway today, and that room was like busting at the seams with books, and it looked like it was being used for storage. Just sort of like, where do you see this physically in the building? And is it something that could get crowded out or become a space issue down the road?
Well, true, that space is important. You know, the location has to be strategic. You know, that's like, for example, at Helen Keller, we have it in the library. You know, they have their own entrance, they have their own privacy. I am confident that I can certainly work with the Karen like to find space that would be equally as appropriate. It could be looking at where our basis program currently is, and you know, we've got some larger classrooms and smaller classrooms, so I'm sure that we could probably find other.
So
So one comment, one question. First, I just want to say thank you because I think the program in the middle school has really changed the lives of students in an amazingly positive way, not just the kids in the basis program, right? Also all of the kids who have the opportunity to interact on a daily basis with students who have a different learning style. They, have friends who have different experiences, and I think it's a true tribute to the work that you have done and brought to this district, and not only saving money, but really making sure that all of our kids feel included and safe. And I really appreciate that. So thank you. Can you just talk about one of the goals that I think kind of gets lost in talking about the students is how the teacher that we would bring in for the junior bridges program can really connect to the classroom teachers and support their work, and just the importance of being able to support some of the tier 1 instruction that happens in the classroom, and bringing in different strategies or supports for students who maybe don't need the junior bridges program but are struggling. Like, what does that look like, and how does that support?
So this program is probably the only program where we've accepted private course students. Accepted students inside of English or if they need a transition placement. So let's say, for instance, one of the but they can't go from out of this placement, right in the regular classroom. So really, all of these students are they got a regular schedule, just like any other student. They are assigned to a classroom, and we expect those students to participate in possibly 30% possible. Sometimes we have educator goes with them to the classroom. Sometimes maybe the teacher may go there and coach to us. So I do know that in the middle school program, the teacher does go in and co-teach with some of these, which allows her to be a member of the watching group. This teacher sometimes will participate in the process because we do have that educational background. So if there are teachers who are struggling with it, you can find consultation for the watch. I hope that answers the question. Yes.
Does this complicate things at all in terms of us meeting the required number of hours in a typical setting?
No. No, you're talking about the time of non-disabled years?
Yeah, like the time that they're actually in the regular classroom. I mean, honestly, I don't know exactly how that works, like elementary versus high school, but I'm just thinking if they're moving in and out, like say they are having, something happens one day, and they end up spending half a day in the bridges program as opposed to in their regular classrooms, does that create an issue as far as meeting their IEP goals?
Well, we write the IEP as such. Let's say they need to have 2 hours in a bridge program. We would write the IEP the same way we would write any program. Typically, we use the word flexible setting. And the reason why we use that term could mean that it could be in the classroom or out of the classroom. How much time a student spends out of the classroom? The goal of this program is to keep them in the classroom. Currently, a lot of these students, when they become anxious, they're spending more time in the school psychologist's office or the school social worker's office. So then you have the question is, how they get in your instruction? So by having a certified teacher, we could minimize the loss of instruction.
A lot of times the students, we're talking about the difference between in their regular classroom and in the support classroom. Oftentimes, some of these students aren't even getting to school. So unless you have that support, right? And that's what we're seeing more and more students having such deep anxiety and other learning challenges that they're not even able to get to school.
Jim, I don't understand the numbers at the bottom here. 6 or it's 5.
Yeah, the reason why you see 65 is because the bridge, not every child can go to bridge. You still need send the students out. It's almost like the last step before you hit Grand Central. So this is our last courageous effort to make sure we support students. will have outplaced health students. So I tried to reflect that here, saying that even though we have 6 students, 5 of them we feel that we can maintain. But this one student, given his needs, really feel
One of the, a few years ago when we started this, we had a student who Reading, maybe, I'm not sure if it was. And then I think they developed their own riches program.
they did.
We, with Trumbull, with Monroe, would that be even interesting to us, with Fairfield, bring a student to
I
us?
think down the line that could very well be a possibility to open it to other towns. But I always like to mention, we have everything that we need and need for our students first. Yes, we did discuss students from Reading. And you have to remember, and we accepted John Reed did not have a full sector. And you have to remember when John Reed put the program in place, they went down to 5th grade. So if we ever have a situation where we have a 5th grader that may need that program, we present it to John Reed. To me, that's a wonderful partnership because all towns, you know, there's a lot of overlap and they can end up the same thing. So let's just say that, let's just take your case scenario. Let's say that we have a student that just can't be in the John Reed building. We can offer them home health. And let's say, yeah, student can sit to my child, can't come to home health, X, Y, Z. We can offer them to John Reed. So think about that like a partnership.
Is it correct to assume, and again, not advertising for Fairfield and Monroe to send their kids to us, but if they did, the numbers that we're saving is essentially what we would charge a neighboring town?
Yeah. What we did was, for example, when you start with Reading Science students, what we do is I work with the business office and I work with HR, the teacher's salary and all the support to be along with the.
Any additional questions for Jen?
Jen, and this is off, this has nothing to do with the junior bridges program.
So
I noticed that in the budget, we're talking about a reduction in special education costs of over $100,000. But we are looking at an increase in special ed transportation of $91,000. Can you help me understand what's going on there?
special education, not only transporting students to have this place, it also means you have to transport students from home to, let's say, San Francisco, and they need, let's just say they need 8 on the bus, or they need a monitor on the bus, or they need to have a wheelchair thing. Those are all costs that it's doing in such transportation. It's not just transporting. students.
Right, no. No, I do understand that, but still 91,000 is a lot of extra money. This has been, new kids come into the district, child's situation has changed, and so now we.
All I can say is that it's as per child.
It's not a one-to-one match between tuition and transportation. One could go up, another one could go down. And on that child, what they need, where they're going. How they get there.
It includes free, it includes the preschool. It includes preschool,
Yes,
right? So, and that, I mean, that can change during the year. And I added a column for myself here, where we are January 22 and 2021, we're back up to 15.5% now. As Samuel Staples is up to 6%. Pellers 14, it's not 14.2, it's 14.7 right now.
right.
And I can only, would imagine as the next 5 to 6 months shake out and little ones come to our doors that may add that news.
Bertha 3 tells us what's coming our way within a year or two. And that could certainly be part of it as well. I'm just guessing that it's going to be. Someone's going to ask for finance, how are you saving money over here by not having outplacement yet? You have to spend over here.
Good. So thanks to Jen for that great conversation.
Okay, well, the goal tonight is to get into a discussion about potential budget reductions and models and what that looks like, and you have a copy of that slide in front of you. I also mentioned that we talked a little bit more about the idea of a facilities manager position and potentially what that would look like. Actually, I'm going to start here. We have met with the administration of Senator Staples and Helen Keller, and we've asked Kim and Steve kind of what are the major issues that you have from a capital standpoint in your buildings. And you can see that there are various items that they're concerned about from this list. And I believe I've mentioned this report to you a couple of times, but there was a facility study that was conducted last summer from an outside architect firm, which looked at potential 5-year capital improvement plan for all 3 districts. And in that capital improvement plan, it identifies projects according to a 1, 2, 3, or 4 priority level. 1 being either these things are urgently required or they're at their end of life. 2 meaning that you need to really take care of this particular issue in the next couple of years. 3 being a desirable upgrade, and so on. So these are just a couple of examples of capital projects that have costs associated with them over the next couple of years. These are all higher level priorities. So in meeting with Kim and in looking at the capital improvement plan that was submitted, these are some things at Senator Staples. Parking lot cracks, cafeteria tables, an entry system and camera, rooftop units, door replacements, and some storm water management. So some of these things are pretty easily to understand. Cafeteria tables, you know, if you're buying 1 cafeteria table, then that could probably go in your operating budget. If you're purchasing 10 of them, that could be considered a capital improvement plan. But certainly, the parking lot cracks, which I think you've talked about for the past several years, could be a $300,000 expense.
Actually, that does not work.
Right. So when you're talking about a $300,000 expense, that's certainly something that you need to plan for. So for Helen Keller Middle School, obviously it's a much older building, and there are more significant needs. The roof replacement alone is in the millions of dollars range. And so there's also issues regarding moisture remediation, water infiltration into this cafeteria, various site repairs to damaged curbs, sidewalks, some bathroom upgrades, and Dr. Clapp and the facility study both identified these projects independently. And these are really the concerns that we need to look at. So these are significant projects, and whenever you have a project like a roof replacement or a cafeteria, it requires an RFP, management of bids, and project oversight. So I've always, in every district I've worked in, there's been someone who's kind of dedicated to this role, and you can see a sample job description, which I've handed it to you. Yeah, and the main point is that the facilities manager is responsible for planning, organizing, and directing the maintenance, repair, and improvement of district facilities and grounds, serving as the district representative in planning and renovating facilities, managing budgets, and ensuring the optimal utilization of personnel and resources. And some examples, responsibilities are long and short-term plans, developing and implementing multi-year comprehensive maintenance plan for corrective, preventive, and obviously planning for the future, developing and approving RFPs and bid specifications, evaluating and reviewing all bids that come in, evaluating and expecting work that's performed and so on. So at the moment, Easton and Reading does not have a facilities manager. There is a director of building and grounds position over at Joe Lower High School. It's a full-time position. The salary of that position is approximately $90,000. What I'm looking at doing is instead of identifying a director of buildings and grounds in one school, having a facilities manager that's more responsible for 5 schools, and having 0.6 of that position right now stay in Region 9, and have 0.2 and 0.2 dedicated to Easton and Reading, which would mean approximately this position will be 3 days a week at the current position where the person is now, and 1 day a week in each building. So for 1 day a week in each building, that person would be dedicated to the responsibilities that I just explained and managing the projects that I provided to you as an example. But these projects are just really the surface. There are so many more small items that we need to address in our building in the next 5 years. And so I was talking to Steve and Kim recently, and I said, okay, well, where's your capital improvement plan? And there is no capital improvement plan for Easton. There's a capital improvement plan for Reading schools. The last time the committee met was in 2020. So it kind of reflects, I think, if you don't have leadership that's focused on facilities, you don't have a plan. It's not something that you can just put in a budget one day. If you're thinking about putting in a roof for $2 million, then that can require significant planning. If you're looking at doing the roofs in all of the school buildings at the same time, then there's obviously scale and savings. And if you have someone knowledgeable in the field, then that person could even take you through the state reimbursement, where you're actually getting state funds for some. So anyway, that's the facilities manager. Just wanted to give you kind of an overview of that right now, before we get into kind of the next slide, which is really the main event of the evening.
It's obviously going to be a tri-district conversation, and I'm just sort of projecting ahead to what that is going to look like, having that discussion in Barlow and, sort of devil's advocate. You're taking one person who has a full-time job, is 5 days a week devoted to just that building. How are they going to meet their needs by scaling back to 3 days, losing 2 days of time? Does it make sense for us to have to budget sort of, you talked about kind of like what would it look like if that doesn't work and we present a proposal for splitting something Easton versus Reading, can we just have that number, sort of have that proposal on the side so we know what, like put a placeholder, but in our minds at least have sort of a slot for both scenarios?
Well, right now,
Or is it too soon for that?
well, I think there's some efficiencies that can be found over at Region 9 in terms of how they use the director of buildings and grounds, how they use a position that's dedicated just to building maintenance, and how they use their head custodians. So that's a conversation they can kind of have with them about their internal stuff that makes it palatable for them to contemplate kind of a change like this. It's much more economical for you to pilot this idea at 0.1, because it is $17,000. Then it might be to put 0.2 or 0.4 or trying to find someone skilled that works on the side. We could break it out and say this person is just the facility person for Easton and just the facility person for Reading. Kind of what we're doing now, though, when we identify 1 day per week for a certain amount of time.
Is the concern no more that you think some of our by district counterparts won't agree with this proposal, so that it's not maybe even an option.
Yes,
Right.
that is what I was trying to politely.
Oh, okay,
project,
I see. So if
That,
one,
that conversation, well, it makes absolutely logical sense to us, that conversation
Yeah.
is likely to potentially go sideways and not end up where we'd like it to be.
so if one district shoots down the plan, then
Well-
it kind of scuttles the idea, and then do we have a backup? Right.
Well, we kind of went down this road with special services.
Yep, right.
Not that long ago, right? Like there was, it became an issue as far as how to collectively work that plan out. But I think that it's a need that we need to fill in Easton and Reading. Whether or not this proposal happens, I would still like to see us have some sort of oversight over facilities in both of our schools.
Right.
You know, to be able to provide this. I mean, I'm optimistic. Want to be optimistic and hope that this goes through without issue.
Sure, okay. All right. Plan B.
Any other questions with relation to the facilities manager role?
Okay. If that's the case, you do have a handout that represents this page. And what we did was we started where we are at the moment, which is row 0 at 4.3%. Current budget request of $18,316,969. And then we have shown you various decreases in the increase of the budget, increase for next year. But the most important two tables are the columns. Is the dollar reduction, which starts at 21,000. And you'll see that the cumulative reduction amount at 21,000 represents our first level. And that's just a recommendation to reduce certified and non-certified medical to 4%, which is a reduction of 21,000. And then line 2, certified and non-certified medical insurance is 3%, which is $47,000. But if it's cumulative at this point, it's a total reduction of 68,000. Line 3 is a reduction of certified and uncertified medical insurance 2%, which is cumulative reduction of 140,000. And then we've specifically targeted removing the shelving at Helen Keller Middle School. Sorry about that, Dr. Clapp. However, we feel like we could probably fund the shelving out of this year's budget pretty comfortably. And so those 4 things alone bring our budget down to 3.47%. And there are other things listed below that for line 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I don't personally recommend that we need to go there at this point, because that's where we start getting into the 3.36% range and cutting cost centers in various places by $20,000. Facilities manager, clubs and activities, the grade 2 teacher, and the junior bridge program. You can see the various cuts that will come next in the red zone. So just wanted to throw that out there for your discussion.
Can you clarify what certified and non-certified medical means? Are you talking about insurance premiums? Is that what that is?
Yes.
Okay.
So if you go into,
It was the earlier conversation, essentially reducing the amount of the increase that you're projecting.
So we have a 5% increase right now in the budget.
so when we look at our master roll-up and we go into the district-wide cost center, you'll see medical insurance for certified staff in C13, and then medical insurance for non-certified staff C20. So that's the area that we're referring to.
Go to the Board of Finance, would we, since we're talking together about already reducing that budget line item, are we gonna stick with the 4.3, or do we down to where we really want to make the enhancements down to 3.36.
Well, or 3.47, I think is the recommendation, Dr. McKinnon, but wherever we land, whether it's 3.47 or 4.6, like, wherever our conversations land, that's the number we will take to the Board of Finance. And essentially, the phase of this discussion that we're in now is we've had the presentations of all the important parts of the budget, the parts that the administration feels are important to defend. And now we're gonna have some conversations about where we think a reasonable place to land is. We could look at row 4, row 2, or row 3 of this and say, you know what, that's the right answer. And we could vote on that tonight and say, that's the approved budget for us to take to the Board of Finance and present as our budget. We could also say, we like row 3, but Jenny says, we really should think about adding X, Y, or Z. And Devin says, we really haven't thought about this. And Randy's, so those conversations could bottom out tonight, could bottom out in the next 20 minutes or 2 hours. Or we say, okay, we have some homework to do in order to get answers. We need to important questions until we schedule another special meeting or a special meeting for that purpose, sometime between now and the end of the month. Our presentation to Board of Finance is, did we lock down? I don't think we locked it down, but it's going to be the first few days of March will be our date. Does anyone disagree with the way I characterize that? Does that seem-
That's exactly right.
okay.
So Jen, if you felt strongly that we should go to the Board of Finance, like say, row 2, you could, as a board member right now, say, make a motion to, set the budget at, 3.91%, and we could call a question, discussion, potentially vote on it.
Right.
So that could happen
That's right.
tonight, it could happen, when?
It could happen tonight. It could happen any time before we get to March. Basically, between now and the end of February, ideally, we're doing that.
How many more times will we meet prior to?
We are currently not scheduled to meet before the beginning of March. Oh, with the tribal, right? Yeah, but
That's not, I know.
that would
this
be
is-
odd. Yeah, that would be odd for us to do it then. I mean, we could, but.
So the only thing that gives me any pause, I'm ready to make a motion and vote now. Because, so one, I think we should just do the shelving this year, so that saves us $6,000.
I'm sorry, what that was for me.
I said I would do the shelving now. It's $6,000, but the health, like we're looking at reducing our budget for medical, and the conversation we had at the beginning is we're still maybe a little unsure if it's. I trust Randy and Jeff; they know the numbers so well, so I would be comfortable being more aggressive and going down to 2%. I think we're also going to have a significant. We're going to have a significant overage this year. So even if we found out in a couple of weeks that we didn't have as much in the reserve as we think, the 1.25, and so we're closer to 900 or whatever, we will most likely have.
We got all the money.
That's right.
No, we don't, but I feel like it's a really smart decision. I do not think, my only concern, and I said this last meeting, and I'm the spender, I guess, is I still continue to worry in the younger grades with the social emotional needs and the fact that most of our kids have not had a normal, if you're in 2nd grade, you've had no normal school, preschool kiddos, just a lot of parents aren't sending them. I just get nervous, but I actually feel a lot of comfort in the fact that if we bring that Junior Bridges program in, you have you have different types of support in the school.
Right.
But I do think, I would always be an advocate for another kindergarten teacher, and I might be the only one, but I would be open to a motion right now at 3.47.
So moved.
So, hold on, because we will be
Never
forced to move into discussion on that specific motion.
Yeah,
unless
we
we
talked
give
about later.
Jenny a chance to, yes, Jenny?
Or anybody else, to Devin's point, I wanted to take another quick look at the class sizes, and
Yeah.
let all of us kind of sit and run through that sheet and just, possibly entertain, like, I would love for you to actually put another person in there. After listening to Stephanie the other night, I'm concerned about how we and Dr. just historically speaking, and I know this may not be, about it, but if we are presenting at 3.47, and historically, data tells us that we will not get a rubber stamp on that 3.47 without much deliberation and further reduction, then we are automatically putting ourselves in the red part of this document.
Right. Yeah, we're signing up for red.
That it gives me pause to just go right in at that.
I think it's a very good point.
I just hate, I hate like, anyway, it's like a frustrating budget.
It is, it absolutely is. It does. It doesn't
I know.
feel right, but at the same time, we know
I know.
we know what we're looking for, at least as far as how the process is going.
Oh, yeah. Because I have no doubt that the Board of Finance will remind us that because of the student population change at Barlow, Easton will have a $713,000 bill. I would tell them before Easton thinks of Barlow. It's the first time I think that's ever happened.
Jenny, just make that, I want to follow up on your comment about your concern when we talked about Stephanie's budget. And we were talking about it a little bit, and I made my comment about, well, that area is too low in terms of curriculum and professional development. The point I would like to make about that is that you add money for curriculum and professional development and textbooks when you have a plan, when you know what investments you're going to make. If we don't have the plan for professional development and curriculum next year, then what we've got in the budget is perfectly acceptable. And let me show you an example of a plan. This is what a plan looks like. So this is a plan that I developed at New Fairfield. And it was the curriculum and development plan, right? I'll show you this quickly. But it was, you can see there the table of contents. And it talked about this is what a curriculum plan is. These are the roles and responsibilities of each of the stakeholders. I'm going to flip through this quickly. The overview of the curriculum plan, what different types of curriculum should contain, how it's aligned to written curriculum and taught curriculum, and so on, high quality instruction. These are the roles, responsibilities, Board of Education, district leadership, responsibilities of the coordinating council. But this is really the key part here. I'm going to get to this slide. I identified different phases of curriculum development. See here, there we go. So this is the most important piece. We identified exactly when we were developing curriculum in all of these areas and what year we were going to roll out the curriculum. It's almost like a capital improvement plan. We're going to replace the roof in 2 years' time. Well, we were going to replace social studies textbooks in 2 years' time. And so this was a 5-year plan, and each year had different phases. So you were in the research and review phase, you were in the curriculum development phase, you were in the implementation phase, and each phase had dollars associated to each one. So the idea is that I think we're okay in curriculum instruction, professional development cost center this year, but in years in the future, we'll develop a plan like this that says we need to increase our curriculum and development cost center next year by $60,000 because we're getting these textbooks, and we'll need another $30,000 to provide professional development training in that area. So that's what I'd like to.
It's like copy paste.
Yeah,
with
copy,
paste. Change the names.
Yeah, I mean, wow.
Right, and so
That's impressive.
and that type of, hopefully, we can discuss with the leadership team, but that type of strategic planning would put that into place in other areas of the budget and other cost centers.
I understand what you're saying. It doesn't make sense to just increase that
Right.
cost center by X number of dollars sort of randomly to make sure that you have what you need.
Yeah.
in order to
Yeah,
specific, and strategic, and transparent.
So the question, I think, is there a question about the kindergarten teacher and looking at the numbers, Jenny? Sorry,
I mean,
Devin, you raised
I
that.
have I have the numbers up. I know Kim is always right about enrollment. We're at
You
98.
stop at Kim's own.
Yeah, you don't have
No, Kim's right. About many things. Especially the couples in the.
Yeah.
It's terrible, but it's fun. I'm just given. You're gonna, I mean, again, you've got kindergartners coming in, they're 5 years old, and now they've lived 3 years of their life, 2.5 years of their life in a pandemic. We know that, and from your, from what you've told us, right, we know that those kids being in school has been more challenging. So when I look at 19 kids in a class,
Yes, I agree.
I'm just a little nervous.
Yes, that's too much.
But you
But you
believe
think
it
we'll
will be
be
lower.
like closer to 17?
I've spoken to the preschool directors in our school, 71. What is also true is that we've had over the years, a lot of new families that have come from the state. That's just something I can't predict. Look at, the more in front of them, they're-
Definitely.
Look at you. Look at you. How far over or under is kindergarten? Isn't that the only grade level that the projection was under? Yeah,
Sorry, Kim, what's the question?
so you're all you're pulling about.
You want the difference number,
With the
the minus,
exception of
the minus
kindergarten.
20? and
Every
minus
single grade level, grade 1 through 5,
Yeah.
the projection was too low. Kindergarten was the only one that was too high,
Yeah, Crowder was off by 20.
right? And we have Crowder and we have.
Jason's gonna put it up on the screen so we can all see it.
I should sort this out, right? I have to figure out how to seal the
Are you-
cracks in my direction.
You know how hard it is to hire.
But if I'm understanding this, though, as far as additions and withdrawals, like it said in September, we added 35. In September, is that what that means?
But that's overall, that's not associated to the kindergarten line. That's K through 5.
Oh,
We ended up getting 35 more kids than we thought when we voted on the budget.
For the whole school.
Right. Well, that'd be really big strong.
But do you think do you think people, I just know some folks who maybe redshirted their kids.
Yeah.
So again, maybe if we're at 71, let's say we get to 8, you think we'll get about 85, 82, 85?
Yes.
Okay. So that's
17.
And what, I don't have the budget. What is the first grade look like? For class
Yeah,
size?
to be honest with you, Jenny, that's actually what I was looking at as well.
First grade right now is 97.
First grade is the grade level historically that we get the most additions and the fewest number of withdrawals. Every single year that I've collected data, I could see that number jumping.
But again, I don't have it. What is it currently projected?
Here it is. It's up here now, Jenny.
Oh, thank you. Sorry.
So Dr.
And that's
Ross-
also the year right now, so in first grade right now,
Right, so
you have the most need in terms of intervention, which is one of the
Yes.
reasons we added. So then that you figure will probably continue that trend.
You're looking at it.
right, so next year, the first grade will be the second grade, and we have that covered. in the budget.
And somebody who like,
Yeah.
is one of those.
Is there? There's
Where-
a slide that also
Jesus,
shows
you
this,
have the
this
slide
class size
That we
section.
showed Tuesday night, and that also shows the number of
Is
kids
there,
in each class.
do we have this where the class size, like,
Yeah.
is side by side?
I think 100 is exactly.
It's class, it's public.
And we asked Dr. McKinnon about how much, if we were talking about a kindergarten teacher or a first grade teacher, what does that cost? So could you, for the class?
You can actually see that in our budget line now for the second grade. So the,
62?
yeah,
Sixty-two,
it's,
63.
All right, so Randy.
it's master step one. I mean, you could budget master step one, but
Right.
I mean, you take.
It's small, too.
Right, right. And
So is the question on the floor, should we have a sixth section in first grade? This year's kindergartners moving up, or first grade for next year, and does that require an extra set?
or for next year's kindergarten.
I'm not debating the addition of the grade two teacher. I
Right.
think the question is would it be prudent to add either a kindergarten or a first grade?
Or like add a teacher who teaches either kindergarten or first grade, depending
Yes.
on the need.
Yes, so you have the flexibility.
Yes.
How would that work?
I can't remember what the circumstance was. But we decided to add in the budget some kind of. I think it's a safeguard. Because we weren't entirely certain if the numbers were gonna jump. I feel pretty confident that the first grade number is gonna jump. More than I think the kindergarten is gonna jump.
You think it's gonna jump more than the 4 that's projected there?
But I do know that the academic needs of the current first grade is pretty compelling.
Current first grade.
Right.
Well, first,
So
We're
if,
not debating. I don't
I
think-
know
I
that
think we
first
moved
grade
on.
is when you start to see kids' needs, because that's when the rigor of the work, like reading, they have, like, it just, you start to really see those needs, and that's, if you don't intervene, that's why you have so many kids there right now. It's like critical.
We're not debating moving the grade two, it's do we add someone for next year's first grade, or do we add someone for next year's kindergarten?
Should there be a sixth section for next year's kindergarten or first grade?
I don't want to do, I mean, we can continue to debate this. Those are the ones that made the recommendation, and if we're gonna challenge the recommendation,
I agree.
we're probably in the wrong seat, but.
Yeah, I
that's just my
agree.
2 cents.
I agree, but I do think it's, crossing our Ts and dotting our Is there. Is there any other recommendation that you would make in this space? If we've just talked about the, so someone that could be a first or a kindergarten. I don't know how that works. I don't know how to do that.
Well, I mean, we can budget's approved as is, we would hire for a second grade teacher. If you're concerned about a first grade position, or you're not sure, we could just post for an elementary education position and change the posting later on. That's it.
Gentle concept just to me per monthly special education or enrollment work. In our current kindergarten right now, 1390 kids. Those kids are gonna be first grade next year. In the current grade one, where it talked about the academic needs, all of those kids in that column that I'm talking about are general education students. But in addition, we have 14 first graders with IEPs. So I'm feeling like grade one and grade two are grade 6.
Right.
Kim, to a point that Jen made earlier about an IEP is the title, but the services being offered really do vary. Understanding what the services are for the kids that are currently in kindergarten. Does that warrant a sixth section? maybe that's
It's
rhetorical
hard
at
to
the moment,
answer
but
the
that's,
question because I don't know.
but that's the
the
question.
preschool kids. The only preschools that truly know well are the ones in our four-year-old program.
Right.
And there are it's hard to answer. Can I assume? We have to need absolutely based on the last couple of years, we've never seen these kids come in.
Well, the kids that are in kindergarten today are gonna be in first next year. That group has 13 kids, at least on my report.
Yep.
That have IEPs. The question is, what services are being asked for? Because a heavy IEP is a burden for any teacher. And if you have, if out of those 13, 8 or 10 are heavy, then that answers the question.
I can't answer wait tonight. I don't think I can answer that tonight.
Okay.
Are we budgeting,
Now, instead of for
are we budgeting incremental pairs at Staples for next year?
That's what I was wondering, is there any middle ground to hiring a full-time teacher versus someone who's there to help supplement and give support to
And
those teachers that are there now?
And I think to a large extent, with the supplemental paras, and if we extend the junior bridges program, I think we're starting to create some of that capacity in the school that, yes.
We looked at this in red, and that exact idea, the idea of not funding an extra section, but doing paraprofessional support, and there was no savings. In fact, adding paraprofessional support was slightly more than the cost. Because you're not just adding paraprofessional support for one classroom, you're getting paraprofessional support to all 5 classrooms, and by the time you add that up, it costs more than the $60,000 for an additional teacher. So we did that analysis.
So what will be with the math if we down to 3.47? And that inclusion, where does that?
Well, it's 60, that's 80, so we're probably 3.85. Just football.
Yeah, we still have it for it.
Oh, yeah, well, there is no question.
If I look at the ones in red, I mean, to me, the no-brainer is the junior grade, second grade teacher, and the facility manager. If I was finance, I would say, what's in that 46,000? And I remember the sheet that had all the activities and the enrollments in those activities, but what's the increase to next year to support those in activities? What is the almost 50,000 represent?
That's all the activities.
It's the entire activities in clubs that we
Oh, really? I didn't catch that.
we funded it entirely with grants last year. We did.
Yeah, we
It's a.
had talked about doing half, do full for this year, and then half for next year, so that we could ease into it. In fact, I think that was January.
Right, but then we didn't end up doing it for whatever reason, so
It didn't happen.
we're going from 0 to 100 here.
Yeah, so.
Right.
Yes,
It's just like this constant argument where we just
Get
get off the
yeah.
table as something that can be done.
And the 20,000, is that just like random efficiencies, like less paper or less supplies? Like, where does that number come from?
Well, we know we can trim employee tuition reimbursement by $2,000 or $3,000, but other than that, it's just finding $24,000 in the cash. Right, we're basically going into each cost center and so we don't even know whether we can find $20,000, but we would take a look. That's just the number where we go into each area and modify. Maybe we go in and look at cleaning supplies and facilities line, or a maintenance contract in the facilities cost center. reimbursement in.
Jason. Looking at the ESSER grant, we've got anticipated spending for 22 and 23. We've got $81,270 for 2.5 paraprofessionals. Paraprofessional is 16 grand. I'm not, even with benefits, I'm not sure how we get to 81. Is there money there? That is, in
There's
essence,
more than 16, I think. Now.
they start at 16. I mean, if we've got some paraprofessionals that are making 30, but starting is 16, 17,000.
Budget.
But this is grant funded, right, which means this wouldn't have any impact on it.
Right,
You're just trying to get it.
Yeah, all I'm looking for is there some money in that line that we could pull out and put against that activity, so wouldn't be carrying the full burden for next year.
This is the grant information and how the grant funds were offsetting the operating budget in the dark gray, Title I.
Right.
And so on. ESSER funds were funding the 1.5 math paraprofessionals and so on. Stephanie really did the deep dive on the grants and has already allocated all the grants where they need to go to. So
The grants have been submitted.
yeah, the grants have been submitted. The grants could always be changed. Right. You can change the narrative and submit the change. However, the grant dollars have been allocated to these things on the slide already. There are no unallocated extras. They're all going towards something. So if you took the extra funds and tried that idea, then you'd be taking it from another place that's already been allocated.
I was just doing the math on what 2.5 paraprofessionals were, and I couldn't get close to it.
Yeah, so my suggestion would be that we go down to 3.47, but then go up by
0.34,
the teacher,
which is 0.34.
also, good job. 0.34, which would bring us to an increase of 0.3, so we'd be at 3.81.
3.81, correct.
We would want the percentage increase as well as the budget as a part of any motions, please, just a note for.
Budget number 17,770,000.
Can I just ask Mr. Petrozelli and Ms. Rafani to check my math on that? So if we did. Okay, so 3.82. So we added the teacher to 3.47, which is 0.34%. Bring the overall increase to be 3.82. And we would need the dollar amount that corresponds to the 3.82. That's what for your motion.
Yes.
$17,770,096. You say that one more time? Yes. $17,770,096.32. An increase of $546,873.11. The big question is how little does this impact? Well, yeah, but it's impossible. Yes.
What's going to impact the taxpayers is whatever the Board of Finance decide will be the bill.
Right.
And that's
A function of
a function of looking at their extra inside balance and how much do they want to use and all that goes into that.
I'll make a motion that we adopt approve the proposed budget increase of 3.82% for a total budget of $17,770,096.32. Represents an increase of 3.82%. $546,873.11.
Do I hear a second? Discussion?
A couple things, I guess. We haven't talked at all about facilities and the money to be spent there. That there's some big numbers up there that should be bonded. There's other numbers that should be in this budget. So if you're gonna replace the roof here, that's a $2 million or $1 million job. We're not gonna build that into a budget. We go to the town and say, raise debt. Just like Region 9 does it every single year almost. It seems like they're bonding $1 million every other year for a field or a building or a parking lot or granite curves. So anyways, that's one thing. The second thing is, I don't feel comfortable talking about the numbers because we don't know what the health insurance is. I think I know what it is, but there's no reason for it to be, there's going to be a 2% increase over this year's budget in the health care. I mean, you could make an argument that we could take, if our spend last year was $2 million on healthcare, budget $1.5 million for next year. And you'd probably end up with $1 million still at the end of the year in the fund if we had a normal year. We had an abnormal year 5 years ago, we went back to the town for $1 million. Crazy.
But wasn't he projecting that, like this year he said was low, but he projected almost a $500,000 increase, right, for next year? I mean, I guess I agree that we could definitely be more aggressive, so maybe we could go flat or even a little bit. I would be a little nervous going 1.5, but I like the way you're thinking.
That's where I was, that's I share that, you know, if I were gonna mess around with this, I would like to see 0% for the medical and say, tell me why that, have Brown and Brown tell us, why doesn't that work? Tell us why that's a bad idea, because I am having a really hard time seeing it.
I mean, no offense, Jay, but you didn't really have as good answers as I would have anticipated tonight, but maybe we caught him off guard or we didn't have time to prepare. But so for me, I just would want to see that. I think we know the number today is $1.7 million that we have combination of well, basically, if we deposit everything we were supposed to deposit in our account, we have $1.7 million in there. And we'd have $1.7 million at the end of the year if we spent $209,000 every month for the next 5 months. We have 5 months left in the fiscal year. We'd still have $1.7 million. If we spent 209 and we're averaging 145 or 150. So, which the average means nothing because that'll change. So that's just one thing. The other thing is facilities. It doesn't feel, you know, if we're doing some big math on healthcare, there's got to be some other gives or takes, if you will, on the facility side. We've been robbing Peter to pay Paul horribly with these buildings. We've been robbing Peter to pay Paul on professional development and other things that we spend on our teachers, and we're going to address that, but that's not going to be addressed over time.
So you're saying, I just want to make sure I understand, on the facility side, that you think, and I agree if I think I understand it, is we're not, and what's in the budget currently is not an adequate amount.
I'm not sure if I know what's in the budget because I get, so if I had a slide that said, here's the 127,000 we've allocated for this year. Listen, last year was a disaster. We set aside some number, 140, 132, whatever, and it went into the ether and apparently nothing got done or something to that. I mean, it's just crazy. So let's not do that again. And we won't because we have different people.
Can I ask you a question? What did you put in your budget request for capital improvement?
And the slide that basic covers the capital for operation.
Steve put money in the facilities line for capital improvement projects. I took it out because I'm basically saying that's not capital improvement. That's, you know, you don't put capital improvement projects in an operation budget. That's a capital improvement. I would say this, the reason why you're in a good position in terms of the health benefits is obviously low claims, and you've been very strategic about how you funded the health benefits. At 3.81%, we know that's not where the claims go there. And that number going to the Board of Finance, now, we still have a lot more work to do. And I don't know where they're going to take us. I haven't been through the process here. I assume it's not going to be there. And we can get all the information we need about where the health data is. When we go to Board of Finance. But if we do very well and have a successful claims for the next 6 months, and we're left with unexpended money in the 270, 271 line, then that money could go into the health benefits account. It sounds like we don't need it. We're pretty strong there, right? And so that would be where you could make the argument that some of those dollars could go towards capital improvement funds. And so the work we could do between now and the end of the year is research a 2% policy. I don't know whether we have that policy on our books right now. Right. So the region 9 board, when they have unexpended funds, they can put it towards pension, capital improvements, the capital fund, and health benefits. Right. Right now, you can only put money in one bucket, right, which is your health reserve account. Right. Well, you could petition the Board of Finance to put those monies at the end of the year into capital improvement with a non-lapse policy.
Yeah, well, but we'll leave it different board of finance.
We've been having a conversation before. It might be worth having a conversation again, but
And also, I think you have now a decent list of here's the capital improvements, and if we're able to save the town not bond, which.
That capital improvement number for us should be about $340,000, or 2% of what our budget.
it's just right.
So that would be, that gives us an avenue that we can take that we haven't been able to explore because we haven't got any traction in the.
Right.
So there's- I hear you, and I'll raise you $5. So, in my opinion, the right way to do it is when you look at what we allocate this year for healthcare spend, just say $2 million. If we spend $1.7 million, that 300,000 at the, in some respect, needs to go back to the town.
Yeah.
Or if the town says, hey, put it in your, it's your capital plan because it's left pocket, right pocket.
Right.
Fine, let's do that.
I agree.
I go back to where we started the year in a healthcare fund of $1.2 million, $1,250,000, I think. That number's too high. That's 6 months of reserves. It should be 3 or 4. Well, 3. So half of that, in theory, goes against, or some percentage of that $1,250,000 goes against next year's budgeted healthcare fund. That's what I would like to see happen.
Yeah.
I don't know what the numbers are. I mean, we can make a swag at it tonight.
I agree with all of that. I think there are 3 things. I think we need a special meeting between now and the end of the month. And there are 3 deep dive conversations. I don't think it has to take 4 hours or anything like that, but I think facilities and really understanding what would that number be if we were A, bonding for it, or B, trying to take some of the unexpended funds. Number 2, healthcare at 0. What does that look like? Is that a terrible idea? Tell us why. If we're making a mistake, we want to know why. Third, I think it would be wise for the administration and for Kim to be able to step away for a minute and make a solid recommendation, or to say, never mind on the kindergarten or first grade teacher. If they walk away and say, you know what, we really, really do need that, then I'd like to hear the case for that from them. But that's just my read on sort of what's yet to be resolved, and would help us get to a place where we have confidence presenting to the Board of Finance. Because I'm being selfish here. When I'm up on that stage and I'm getting questions from the Board of Finance and they say, well, facilities, this or that, I want to be able to recall the conversation. They, you know, if we're talking about the healthcare at zero, I want to be able to defend that to the nth degree. And if it's not at zero and we say, you know, it really should be at 3, 4, or whatever number we end up at, I want to be able to defend that vigorously and knowing that we did all of our homework.
Okay, so I will rescind my motion. But I got so beautiful with all the numbers. And I'm so excited to see them. Okay, that's fine. I'll rescind.
The conversation about facilities and bonding, I don't know whether we can do that by ourselves. And, you know, like, the normal process is you have a facilities committee and you make decisions with the committee and the town. And there's a whole process about board of selectmen and referendum, right? There's a whole part that I don't control.
But is it possible to say, like that, even just that list, like, we know we have a $2 million roof coming up, a $300,000 parking lot, like, these, just like swag, you know, kind of swag a couple things, so it's like, hey, we have these, and that's why we're thinking, you know, again, this isn't gonna be part of our operational budget, there's big expenses, but this gives us an argument to set up that 2% fund. You can start tackling some of the smaller capital improvements without having bond and without having, well, the roof is obviously not gonna be part of that, but like,
I guess my question is, when you look around, the building ministers look around and they go, okay, I need 20,000 for this, I need 6,000 for that. And it's a 60,000 number per building or something in that scheme, not the roof, not the parking lot, but Staples, even though that has to be done, those are gonna get bonded, they have to get bonded because they're multi-million dollars in aggregate. Is that feasible in the next month or two or not really?
The 20,000 here or there, not the roof and parking lot. Is that what you mean?
yeah, so like I think we
Yeah,
thought
so
that we're
we're
gonna build a door here.
There were no numbers on that sheet the other day, earlier tonight, felt like it. There were no numbers next to the doors near the kindergarten entrance or the preschool.
Kitchen tables.
And
Randy,
Facilities manager.
well, I think that's a part of Dr. McKinnon's argument here is we got a chicken or the egg problem here. It's like the real homework necessary to do that and the capacity to do that homework is very small in terms of the administrative standpoint because they're doing this times 3. And so I think if we're saying, you know, give us the 20,000 numbers, it's possible that Dr. Clapp had some of that in a previous presentation and can recall that, but it's not for us to put back in the budget. It's for us to make the case for the 2% fund to the board of finance at this point to say, we believe we're going to have a significant amount of money that fits really nicely with the 2% fund. And we would like to basically start building our own capital fund in that 2% fund this year. What do you guys think? That sounds right?
Kim, can I ask you a question? When we did when Public Works gave us a ballpark figure to replace the parking lot, wasn't that $350,000?
Yes,
Okay,
I mean,
and that was 2 years ago.
yes.
We're
Our
probably,
costs have increased.
Probably
Yeah,
10
yeah,
times.
yeah.
we're probably
Yeah, I
talking
mean,
about 400,000.
just to do something like that, you get 3 quotes. I mean,
What was done, who came in last year and put numbers on things and what happened? That was under plans, I thought, but it was.
Yeah, it was.
yep, so it was an architect firm called KG&D. And they did facility studies in each 3 buildings. But we also had some independent contractors come and look at drainage and the water infiltration problem here and so on in different places around. Yep. Numbers on that.
We have flood insurance.
We would have-
Let me tell you, get
We would
flood
have flood
insurance,
insurance.
from personal experience. We have flooding issues.
Okay, well, maybe then it's not about facilities as much as it is about healthcare and
And the
personnel
cable,
and,
yeah.
you know, programs.
To make the case for the 2%
Right,
would buy us a new parking.
right. Yeah, and we need to figure out how we make that case for the 2%. I don't think that has much to do with the administration. I think it has more to do with us.
Right.
And so I'll do some more homework, and ahead of our special meeting, I'll try to make sure we have an agenda item there where we can talk about that as a group. And try to figure out what decisions we would need to make on our side in order to then approach the board of finance.
The Board of Finance will push back with both hands on bonding the parking lot.
Yeah, okay.
Because that's a
Right.
20-year payout,
Right.
and you're gonna be looking at maybe having to replace
Right.
the new parking lot, maybe 10 years, so that you're paying for
Right.
those paying for
I think
parking
he
lots.
was the one that was sort of scolding us at one point about it,
Yeah.
thinking about the cracks versus just doing the whole thing. So-
Well, we do this, we
Well,
do it, we save money like this all the time. How we buy
Did you
tires.
say that again?
How we buy-
That's
how
right.
we buy things.
She said that Andy was probably suggesting that we should replace the parking.
I
we
remember,
should've just
I remember a
replaced-
conversation with the Board of Finance once where it was brought up that we, to not be sort of penny wise, pound foolish about, like, why are you talking about filling cracks? Why aren't you talking about paying for the water? Yeah.
And that's where the 2% would come right in, and that takes the pressure off the town, it takes the pressure off.
But just
Well, for that one, yeah, for that project, but there's a
for
larger.
that project.
They don't like it, they never will, because they lose control of it. Is Board of Finance listening to this? Are they coming to this?
No, but we are joined by certain members of our.
Ah.
which is good. But they rewatch the YouTube videos. Maybe, I got home last time and there were 80 people who would watch the video in real time with us. So, there are people who will watch.
The process for 2% would be Board of Ed policy first, and then an MOU between the board and the Board of Finance.
Set up, if there was a concern of control, and I think Randy, I remember that correctly, if the MOU, could there be a discussion around, similar to how they work with Park and Rec, right, with certain funds? It's
Yeah.
like we have to go to them, so they still have control of the money, right, but like it's dedicated to like facilities, Board of Ed or something, so
Yeah.
that, again,
This is-
yeah,
This is not for us to have a slush fund.
correct.
This is for us to be able to put some money into some meaningful capital projects without having to.
Well, and the concern too was, again, and I think it's something we should address, is just, well, are you intentionally having money left over to put money into a thing? And obviously that's, like here, we've just gotten lucky with our,
Right.
but
Health
in,
claims.
right, our health claims, and so we're able to invest that money without having to go back to the town.
Right.
So I think just potentially in the MOU, there's opportunity to
Yeah.
provide
It's-
comfort.
Yeah,
In
it's
theory,
worth
it
the
smooths
conversation.
out the numbers, they would say, no, just come back to us for your budget, and we'll come with it. You know that.
We know that doesn't necessarily happen, yeah, and then we end up having to make the choice between the parking lot and having enough teachers. Right,
That could happen.
right, so, okay. Great conversation, special
Can we
meeting.
look at the calendar and agree on a date?
It may be difficult to do that, I don't know if everybody has their calendars ready to them, but I think roughly speaking,
So was it our calendars or?
yeah, I think roughly speaking, it's about
I'm just looking and there's kind of
conflict with other
with the long
budget
weekends. School,
Can we meet at
joint
6
board
o'clock
of ed.
before the tri-board meeting? That's on the 22nd, we meet at 6 before the tri-board.
That's tough for me. I'm sorry.
It gives us an hour.
From the administration standpoint, if we did want to talk about healthcare at zero, I don't think that that's actually something we need the administration to do much for at all. We need Jay to tell us why that's a bad idea. And if it's a bad idea, tell us. We would need the numbers run so that we understand what the implications on the budget are. For the kindergarten or first grade teacher, that's some work. Do we know how much time that would take for those conversations to bottom out?
Well, I mean, the kindergarten, first grade teachers relatively simple. It's basically talking about numbers and where we think they are and what the posting looks like. I'm not worried about that at all. Your recommendation is to do a 6 section of either K or 1 based on what we need at the time. That's
I think it's less about, I think it's actually exactly what you said, is I want it to be your recommendation. And for that, I would, I would think, like, just like we had Jen make the case for the Junior Bridges program, I would want it to feel like this is coming from and enthusiastically supported by our building leader and our superintendent, as opposed to, hey, that would be nice if you guys are offering it. I want it to be more like, hey, we really need that. As we realized it was a possibility, we realized how much it was supported. Maybe I'm alone on that.
No, I think you're absolutely right. If we go to the Board of Finance and say, well, we want to the teacher will either be a kindergarten or first grade, I can see it blowing up within seconds. If we say that we want a 6th section in first grade because we have 13 kids with IEPs and half of them are heavy duty and, well, now you've got.
I think it's, yeah.
Right.
I love this presentation, so thank you. I just don't think, I think we need one slide with number of kids, your projection, IEPs, potential kids in intervention already, and that's pretty much.
And also group 504s.
And to Jenny's earlier point about the projections for what the population looks like it's going to be in the future, is that we may end up with 6 sections per grade across senior staples. There's also an argument there about stability in the sections that is worth exploring as well, because there's a real benefit to that. So, but like we shouldn't have to, I'm gonna say we shouldn't have to make that case. I'm saying like I would like for the case to be made by our administrative building leaders. That's I guess my Jenny.
My reason for thinking about it, Devin brought it up first, I was also gonna bring it up, was that if you remember though, when this all started, Kim asked for a 6th section in that grade. And then we had further discussion, and then Mr. Von Rapp looked at things, looked at numbers. So maybe I filled in the blanks incorrectly, but I think sometimes our administrators are like, all right, what can I reasonably ask for? I don't think there was ever not a wish for 6 sections in those different grade levels. They probably thought, I'm only going to get another teacher here. Where's the place where, if I have to make a choice, which grade level is it going to go to?
That's helpful.
So I think the argument is applicable. It was made originally, it was just shifted to a different spot.
Yeah.
So there was originally a request for an additional 6th grader, and then, looking at projections and everyone else. I don't know. I don't think it's as big a hurdle to kind of backtrack and fill in.
Something else we need to think about is art, music, PD. Because we have one section in grade 2. I think that the art teacher can fold in those additional sections. The one was a little curious because they meet twice a week. Now we're adding 2 sections, and we're already at full capacity with the 30 classes they currently have. Something we do need to think about is a slight FTE increase in art, in music.
Yeah. So that's it, right? It's like the devil's in the details, and it feels good to me. Like it feels like the right answer to me, but like we need a little bit of the help us understand the implications of this from an exercise.
The special meeting will cover medical insurance and any kind of additional
Any possible,
faculty. Staff.
Yep.
Right.
as well as our own homework around
The 2%.
those 2%. That's a better name. But,
And hopefully we can understand the 343,000 that we didn't approve. Legal help.
Yeah.
Did Vicky email all of you about that? or-
She emailed me and then I forwarded it today. So I don't think Jeff had a chance to look at it all before this.
I haven't seen it.
It came at like 5 o'clock. Yeah, sorry, that's my fault.
What's it?
I think she
I can
explained.
read it to you. like-
She explained.
It takes a bit to digest.
Yeah, if you're gonna want to read it, like, go
And
through
then
it,
reread it.
you'll probably want to.
feel like we have a good next step. Any additional comments or questions?
I think we moved that.
Well, I think, yeah, I don't know that we're gonna walk out of here with the date, because I think we need some back and forth with the administrators, but we could try right now. I don't know that a 6 o'clock, because it puts us gives us a hard stop. I think we need the ability, the flexibility, otherwise we may be looking at another one, and then we're crunched for time doing it in a matter of 4 days. Or administrators, what is your calendar look like? Is there, it's first week of March, somewhere in the first week of March. So we should consider pencils down on the 28th of February, and I prefer to have a few days to prepare, please.
Well, I mean, our evenings time, because we're doing meetings for other budgets, for other boards. Listen, if you want to do something at 10 a.m. on a Wednesday, it'll be available via Zoom.
Do we have the capacity in this group for? I'm just asking, I don't know how many people are working from home or.
Yeah, what's that look like?
No.
I could make it work.
I could do it.
Devin, you have that?
Yes.
I wouldn't go.
Yes.
Randy's enough?
It'd be a crapshoot that day.
Yeah.
To be honest with you.
Yeah.
So,
I was just throwing it out there. I did not
It's
mean
good
to
to know.
at all
Yep.
discredit anyone's schedules or.
How is the 16th?
What day of the week is
It's a
that?
Wednesday.
perfect.
It's next Wednesday.
Is that, that seems like a heartbeat away. in terms of the amount of time it might take.
It's 2 days after Valentine's. All people break loose.
Well, we're gonna listen to Jay.
Right. And
And
then
we do anything on facilities, because it's not really possible.
it's possible that it could be an hour-long conversation. Right? That wouldn't be crazy. Is next Friday crazy? Is the 18th crazy? Is
We're
cool.
not-
You're out of town, right? Okay.
To cut down on the time of the meeting, what's the ability to get information from it in advance from Jay and to the healthcare report from an accounting perspective, actually illustrates what the balance could be if you had put everything in there that you had budgeted.
Yeah, I think that's a perfectly reasonable ask. If
I need this all broken down.
Yeah.
Probably to a full prayer.
we all need it.
Step by step.
If- I'll work with Dr. McKinnon to put together a summary of the exact data that we need. Now, I don't mean to give the answers, but here are the questions. And then I'll share it with the board, and people can tell me, am I missing anything? And then we can use that as our guide to make sure that we have everything at least 2 days before.
Yeah,
That-
that would make the meeting go quicker.
Yeah, here. All right, so is the 16th a no-go? Or I know it's hard for you, Devin, is there another suggestion? I love the idea of doing it on Valentine's Day, but I don't think we get a lot of support there.
Doing it by yourself.
We do the 17th is, I know it's half day.
John, since it's 10 o'clock, do we want to just you with the administration, have a quick conversation and then just send out an email to us?
We will resolve this.
Yeah,
I think we're zeroing in on the 16th. I think that's probably gonna be the date, because it does have to be next week. All right,
No, I can zoom in. That's just how the thing, so.
Okay, so I think we should pencil in the 16th. And count on having an efficient meeting as much as possible. Okay?
Yeah.
Jen, does 7 o'clock work for you if we do it on the 16th?
I can zoom in,
Okay, okay, so 7 o'clock start?
that's okay with me.
Yeah, on the
As long as I
16th,
can zoom in.
good, okay, so let's call that the date and time. We'll get noticed. And then I think we're just looking for board member comment. Motion to adjourn. Thank you, Devin. Do I have a second? Thank you, Jenny. Absent objection. We are adjourned at 10:02. Thank you very much, everyone.
Yes.